sausages.
I thought it was true. But I'm Ozone Ocean. I love his hair, and I love his crackdown on all of the immigrants because they don't have bad fashion sense. So they should all go and live in the ocean.
The Ozone Ocean. Hello and welcome to Quackcast number 311. I'm Ozone Ocean. With me is Mr. Baines. Hello, Mr. Baines. Mr. Canadian Baines. Hello.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, mon chéri. We have the marvelous Pitface. Hello, Pit. Pit. That's how you call a Pitface. And then we have the wonderful Tan Serene. She is serene as always.
Hola.
Hola, mi amigo.
Like a plastic.
Yes, she is. She is like a placid lake, like Lake Placid, and there's like a killer crocodile or alligator underneath the surface.
That's
I'm more like a placid lake.
So we're going to be talking about myths and modernity, or taking myths into modernity, rather, which is Tan Serene's excellent news post from last week and this week as well. So it has had a sequel, like Star Wars. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Return of the. No, it's the myth of modernity strikes back. That's where we're up to now.
Yes.
Modernity strikes back. I like that.
That's what we're going to be talking about, and like modern versions of myths, and how you adapt it into the modern day. Not just we see like echoes of myths, but how you actually adapt it and change it. But before we get into that, got to bring up the featured comic. Featured comic this week was Trumped. And I'm going to be reading that out. So take it away, Ozone Ocean. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature this week was Trumped. Rawdale is fast becoming our resident political cartoonist. Hot on the heels of Jesus 2016 comes Trumped, a humorous satirical take on the start of this latest US presidential administration. Love him or hate him, you have to admit that Trump is a pretty ridiculous figure who's pretty damn funny. Rawdale seems to agree with that and packs Trumped with both straight humour and biting satire. This is a funny political photo comic. Trumped by Rawdale, rated M. I hope you read this. This is quite an entertaining comic. He's put little captions on photos of various, publicity shots by the Trump administration of the man himself and those around him. The First Lady Melania, I think she's called, and his various characters that surround him, like Baron and whatever else these little mini bosses are called. I can't even remember. But he's added this very, very funny cutting dialogue about what they must actually be saying to each other. You should go and read it. You'll be entertained. You'll find it addictive. You'll go through his entire archive and be wanting more and more and more. Or perhaps you'll be wanting less. Less of the administration, so there's nothing more to make fun of. Oh well, it's up to you, your own tastes. So read Trumped by Rawdale, rated M. And that was our feature by Rawdale. He does these great political comics. He did one that was called Jesus 2016, which was Jesus running for the Republican presidency. And he didn't want to be running for Republican presidency. They just adopted him and dyed his hair blonde and all this kind of stuff, and it was very funny, and now it's trumped, which is hilarious. I hope you look at it. It's just, my God.
I liked what you said about in your feature there. I read it. And about, like, no matter what your political leanings are, if you're in favor of him or some of his stuff, or it's like, nonetheless, it's like a fascinating spectacle.
Yeah, you have to admit.
And he's like, Trump is a fascinating guy in a way. I mean, it's crazy. Like the stuff on his handshake recently that I looked at, it's like, it's kind of endlessly like fascinating.
Yes.
To see what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to admit that he's a hilarious sort of figure, whether you are Republican or...
Yeah, no matter what your politics, like it's kind of, it's hard to look away, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just because you don't like someone doesn't mean they're not interesting to learn about, these huge personalities, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's good.
So, yeah, that was the feature. Trump in all capital letters apart from the ED, which is in small letters. So, the featured music this week is by Mr. Gum Wallace again. And Baines, you've heard this one. It's Life and Death.
Oh, Life and Death, yeah. Yeah, great.
Life and Death. He does such a fantastic performance, doesn't he? He wanted us to do it.
Yeah, and then we were kind of like, this was amazing. It made us like so happy to hear this. It's it's really nice.
He knocked it out of the park.
That's all I'll say. He knocked it out of the park, exactly.
So, Life and Death. It's light-hearted lyrics and classical vaudevillian comical ukulele mixed with synth and a bit of rap in the best tradition of the Flight of the Conchords, except this is Gum Wallace. So take it away, Gum Wallace.
Yo, listen up. Gonna drop some old school ukulele on y'all. Life and death, life and death. It's a little comic about life and death. One is death, the other is not. And sometimes they talk with God. Life and death, life and death. It's a little comic about life and death. One is death, the other is not. And sometimes they rap with God. Life and death, life and death. It's a little comic about life and death. One is death, the other is not. And sometimes they chat with God. Peace out.
And that was Gum Wallace's track. Isn't that charming, that beautiful, clever Flight of the Gum Wallace, I will call it. So, this topic about myth and modernity, Tanserine, what brought this to mind? Yeah, I think you mentioned you were talking about with Pitface, weren't you?
Yeah, actually, this is all Pit's fault.
Ah,
it
always is, everything.
Of course.
I just like to ruin everything.
And she said something that was really, I mean, it rang very true to me as I read her comics, that like Bones is very much a weird, but very much a weird version of Odysseus imputed myth. The way that he travels around without actually wanting to.
Yeah,
meets all these different sort of clusters of people, or everywhere in this weird alien world outside of Septica.
Yeah.
So. And Septica is...
And he comes home to his home in disarray.
Exactly. And Ithaca is Septica is his Ithaca. And of course he returns and everything, as Pete said, is in shambles. And there is a Penelope waiting for him, and she punches the hell out of him, but she is waiting for him, I think. Okay. Yeah, well, it's my
She is.
interpretation, so that's now take it with a grain of salt because critics always do their own narratives. And then she said, well, we were talking like if Bones is Odysseus, then Blitzov from the Epic of Blitzov is Gilgamesh, which is very true. Because what is the deal with Blitzov at this point? It's his consolidation with mortality and how to deal with the idea that everything dies and of course that he will die at some point. And this fight that he does with monsters and the way that he's the one that deals with the monsters and he's the one that travels and then brings back everything new. I mean, it is very much...
the founder of Bunker City as well. So
yeah.
Exactly. So of course he's Gilgamesh, and that's how I thought. Like, okay, this is amazing and fascinating. And what if I actually make a news post about it? Of course, it wasn't nearly as fascinating because I always tend to be very analytical and very textbooky. Especially
good food for thought, though. So.
Yeah, so that's how I thought about it. So you have a bit face to blame, and or thanks, depending. And yeah, in general, I thought that okay, so many of our pop culture themes basically do have a connection back to myths, not only Greek myth or, ancient myth necessarily, but certainly myths and legends. And how this is done and how do you do it? And how do you do it well and how do you do it badly? So it was a bit a roundabout way for me to talk about a couple of things that I really like and a couple of things that I hated.
Yeah.
So there you go. There you have it.
Nice. I've come across the idea before, and I haven't looked at it in quite a while, so I was not totally prepared for this, but comparing Greek gods and those myths. There's an echo here. I'll keep my voice down a little bit. To like modern day superheroes. Like the superheroes now, who are such a huge mainstream thing, are somewhat analogous to Greek gods, and how those aspects of those different god characters kind of correspond to different, I guess, instincts in humans, and like how they, those myths are so enduring and they've been around for forever, which is what enduring means, I guess, and also maybe why those superhero things are so successful. They tap into something really deep into us as humans, kind of thing, like these sort of components of us that, gods like Zeus and Apollo and Aphrodite, and is Aphrodite the bow and arrow lady?
It's Diana.
No, Aphrodite. No. Goddess.
Artemis. Yeah, it depends if you're Roman.
Artemis. Yeah, Artemis. Yeah, and all these other characters have modern day, Tense and Oz have like modern day analogs, and Artemis is a big one actually. I mean, the Hunger Games character and many other characters like sort of have this Artemis, this female power kind of essence to them, that relates to that. Zeus is Superman.
I got a
Hades is. Oh, really? Yeah. Of Wonder Woman? I mean, of Hunger Games?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
She's going to shoot you with a bow and arrow.
Awesome.
Right. So, anyway, I'm with you on that. I don't have the perfect analogs, but I did look at some that theory a few years ago, and it seemed really true.
Yeah, it's a way of taking these powered personalities, because I don't know how else to word it now, personalities, whether they be the gods of old or whether they be the, some asshole who put on a cape one day. They always seem to kind of come back and reflect on humanity in some way. That's why they have flaws and that they, there's something to be said there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ones that reflect on humanity and have flaws, they're like the traditional gods, like, the Norse gods, the Greek gods, all that kind of thing. Whereas, say, the Christian mythology is more this, and Judaism and also Islam. Those gods and people don't have any flaws. They're pure. You can't say that Jesus has them.
I don't know about that. I mean, you have so many personalities in the Bible that are less than perfect.
You do, but how many divine personalities have flaws?
Well, you don't have many divine personalities because it's monotheistic. So you have one
angels.
concept.
Mm-hmm.
Angels, they have flaws. Come on. All the problems were that due to an angel that had an ego problem.
So
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
Gabriel or Michael or Raphael, these Uriel, whatever, these guys, they're unassailable.
But still, I don't know. Personalities that have flaws, and we're talking about when we think about myths, because myths don't just pertain to gods either. Think about King David and
that's true.
How much of a fuck up he is at one point, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's not only that. Many very close to divinity, let's say, because especially the Judaic religions in general. I think that they often do draw a line between the pure divine element, which is absolute, and that's the point, should be absolute, and then you have everything else, which is on the other side of this line in the sand, let's say. So I think that if you go beyond that line in the sand, you get all sorts of problems. Like, everyone is flawed, even the ones that are supposedly the saints and the ones that have the closest relations to God. They do have problems. I mean, let's start from Abraham. He is less than perfect, definitely. He has like a gazillion problems. And okay, and you have people like Pete said, like David. Oh my God! And wasn't he the one that murdered his best general for a woman?
To get with his woman. Yeah, exactly. Bathsheba.
So that's not good, I think. So. There are lots of things. If you sit down and parse like the actual personality as it is described in the Bible, I think you would see that nobody is perfect in there. And
even Jesus. Think about I was saying the name, not just like Jesus. Think about and he overcomes it. If I remember correctly, maybe I don't, but remember before he's crucified, he himself has a crisis of faith. Why have you forsaken me? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a hell of a thing for the Son of God to say.
Right.
Yeah, and also that was when he actually was on the cross, and before that, when he knew that it was coming, and he was in the garden of the olive trees. I don't know how it's said in English.
Gethsemane?
I know it only in Greek. Maybe, okay. It should be. So anyway, and then he is praying for it to not happen, which is so intense that he actually bleeds blood. He sweats blood. Which is a psychological reaction that, of course he bleeds blood, but he sweats blood. And and but actually sweating blood, anyone it can happen to anyone, and it's a result of extreme psychological pressure and stress. And there you have it. So it wasn't like, okay, said, we are working through this, and It's all cool. We are zen about it. No.
Oh God, yeah. Okay, good point. Point well made. So what? We were talking about how there are modern analogs and things that are made based on those myths. It's very you do see some stuff based on Christian mythology or Judaic mythology because there's always the David and Goliath thing.
Superman.
I mean, that is
Superman.
Superman's the newest movies are a lot of Christ symbolism
really?
going on. Yeah.
He all walks like this all the time.
Yeah.
With his arms out. Oh God. So David and Goliath, yes, Superman. Being one I remembered was Cool Hand Luke in that movie, which is there's some very strong allusions to Cool Hand Luke, the character being Jesus, in various ways. He sacrifices himself for his men, for his fellow inmates, and the warden is obviously Pontius Pilate. He's trying to break Jesus break him, but yeah. And even at the end, you see when he dies in the middle of a crossroads and the camera pans out and it's like, it is the cross.
For anyone who didn't understand.
Yes.
There it is.
Just to hammer it home. Yeah. So.
And also Matrix 1. Neo is very Jesus-like. All through the 3 movies. And if you see, like in the 3rd movie, if you have the stamina to actually see through it to the end, when he is being absorbed by the machine, it's again in the sign of, it's like he has the position of a crucified person that's being sucked into the light. So you don't get more messianic than that, I think.
Yes, classically messianic. Very true. So you brought up some other examples of things where we've taken myths, because it's not only, like as Pitt said, it's not only divine myth. There's all sorts of heroic myths and legends that get repeated and used. Like obviously the King Arthur thing gets recycled again. People adapt it. Obviously adapt. Just take the whole thing and this is a modern King Arthur, or this is. Oh, we've seen Ulysses in Space, Ulysses 31, I think it was called. I love that.
Yes. Me too. I love that. I was pissed that it didn't actually end, but yeah.
They need to finish it. Don't do a reboot. Just finish it. That's what you need to do.
Exactly.
I hate reboots.
Yeah. There are the obvious adaptations, like the one that I really hate. I haven't read the books, and I probably should before I make this judgment, but I can't bring myself to. But I hate this Percy Jackson adaptation. Oh my God! Yes, which is like the adaptation of of the demigod myth into modernity, while keeping intact, the existence of the 12 gods of Olympus and so on and so forth.
Titans and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think there are also some Titans and things. Yeah, everything.
He's basically Perseus, isn't he? But Percy instead of Perseus.
Yes. Oh my God. Anyway, I think it's one of the easiest and most shallow ways to do it, which, at least in the way they showed it in the movie, it felt like this. I haven't actually read the book. Maybe the book is better. But it's just taking the wrapping of one thing and just swapping and swathing it around something else. And there you have it, adaptation, which is, I think, in my opinion, not the way to do things, because it's the shell and not the content.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've never seen it, but that would get on my nerves. too. Like it's just kind of like window dressing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, for me, it felt more like a high school drama thing, just with demigods. That's all.
I think I heard somewhere that was written by a very young person originally too, so it was pretty shallow.
That would explain it.
Yeah.
I would be more forgiving if it was that one. Because a young person to write this is very promising. But up until...
Yeah. There are levels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that brought to my mind, so a shallow adaptation. Well, say we've got, they often do that because they're copyright-free stories. Everybody knows the stories originally, so it has that cultural grounding. You know, it's like doing an adaptation. It's like doing a reboot of Spider-Man or some movie that everybody loved, like a reboot of Ghostbusters. Everybody knows it, so it's going to give you're going to have a guaranteed audience for it. So
it can't miss.
Exactly.
But
Speaking of Ghostbusters.
Too big to fail.
Oops, too big to fail. Yeah, exactly.
So that's a great reason for adapting it. Yeah, it's copyright. Well, in those adaptations, the Ghostbusters not copyright free, but the myths they're copyright free. So everybody can do a King Arthur story, or
Of course.
the Odysseus, or all that kind of stuff. But say Thor, that is another one that's just been taken off whole cloth. And who is it? Marvel.
Yeah.
Marvel did their adaptation of the character.
I think it's Marvel.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who do the good.
I don't know if that is like an adaptation, because it's just a different incarnation of the same thing, because it's the original god that for some reason he's not a god but is an alien, and he comes to Earth and blah blah blah. That I don't know if it qualifies as an adaptation per se.
There's too many parallels, because they don't just have the god and they don't just transplant him, but they have all the people near him, all the fellow characters, Hephaestus and that's a Greek one, Hephaestus, whatever. They have the Norse versions are just basically
they have Loki, they have Odin, they have. Is this what you're saying? Like his whole world retinue exists out there. Yeah, his retinue exists.
And they do the same things, and he has all the the hammer and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's just transplant.
And he is going to be teaming up with the Hulk, just like the original myth.
Of course.
So we can see how that works out in the next year or two.
Yeah, on the way
if you put in that, I didn't put that in the news post because I'm sure that nobody would be able to connect it, but I would like to talk about it just very briefly, because I think it's like the best adaptation of a fairy tale that I have seen recently, and it's Korean, so I'm sorry, but it's set in a very Mission Impossible, Born Identity sort of setting. And it doesn't tell you that it's an incarnation of the myth of Snow White, actually. And and you have this guy that you follow who is very like Jason Bourne style, secret ops. He can do anything, beat people up, be super good with everything, and all sorts of things. and he comes across this girl that asks for his help. And she's running away from someone. And that's how the story begins. And in the end, the supervillain is this woman who is in this huge high-tech war room, so to speak, like of a corporate, she's like a corporate magnate. And she has this AI thing that talks to her, sort of like the computer in the Batcave. And she calls this computer the mirror. And she says, mirror, mirror, tell me this, that. And that's the first time that you realize and you make the connection that, okay, this sounds like a myth. And they have assigned the roles of the huntsman, who of course is the Jason Bourne sort of guy, and the queen and the king, of course, who is Snow White's father and Snow White herself, in this super modern, super relevant setting. And it is its own story. The only thing that they have preserved from the myth are the roles and the connections between the characters, and that's the only thing that they have preserved.
Yeah.
And it's really, really good, really exciting how they make these small connections to the myth to tell you that if you can see what we did, this is what we did, sort of thing. And I really liked it. I think that's the way to adapt the myth in modernity. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. That's,
and the speech. I wanted to say that.
That's always really interesting when that is done in that way, when you can see those parallels and they're deliberate, but they're not obvious. It's clever. It's done.
It's also like you take the content, like sort of kind of the relationships, and try to get to the essence of what it is. Like it's the opposite of going like actually naming these characters, what the originals were named, but having no real, like you're not really doing what the myth was doing. Yeah. You're just kind of hanging those ornaments on it. So that's definitely the better way to do it.
Yeah, because people know the relationships. They know what these things mean. And they're going to be really interested to see how you use them and what kind of ways. Because you've got that cultural baggage to work with.
Yeah, or even if you don't, like those relationships are powerful, and that it can work in a new format, even if someone doesn't know the original
exactly
context of it.
You don't need to know the story of Snow White. It's just an extra treat if you know it, because you can see some patterns and nuances that someone that wouldn't know wouldn't. Yeah. And like there are certain scenes. There's a scene with the ice cream that is a fruity ice cream. See, and Snow White character eats it and then she almost dies, which is like the apple.
Oh.
Yeah.
And things like that. But you don't actually need to know the myth to follow the story and be involved in it.
Yeah. That just adds an extra sort of sweetness to it, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's really cool. I know things that have done that, but it's really hard to sort of think of examples off the top of my head. But it's beautiful when you can recognize those things.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like obviously with Pit Face's bones, which is obvious.
That's one of the things that I think. Sorry, yes. Go.
No. I was being facetious.
Hephaestus.
Oh.
Who is another hero?
Just for that. That's why I really like the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou movie.
Yeah.
Because it's that. And that's why I'm gushing about it in the second part of the news course so much. I feel that they did it very well, the adaptation.
Yeah. That is a really, really clever one. I just thinking and just remembered Orpheus. That's one that's often repeated. That's a very popular one. Very much related to this. Damn it, I can't think of any specific example, but yeah, often those classic Greek myths have just so much cultural relevance because they're founding myths of Western society, really, aren't they? So
yeah,
those
great writers. I can't even remember.
There was this one webcomic in Dark that also did it, but it took like a very Catholic myth, let's say, which is purgatory. And it was the title of the comic as well.
Yeah.
Where you have this bunch of criminals and the way to redeem themselves to survive. Yes, to survive purgatory, and they have to go through all these stages of purgatory, which is basically either Dante's Inferno, if you like, or not Inferno, the other one, the sequel, where he goes into purgatory, not after he has gone through the rings of hell. And she does that very well. But of course, she didn't finish it. And we're like in second or third stage, I think.
She quit. That was Sarah Havlethwaite. That was her name. Or it is her name now anyway, because I think she's been married. But yes, Sarah Havlethwaite. Come back and finish Purgatory Tower. Tell us how.
Yes.
Or else we could just read the myth ourselves and make it up as we go on.
Exactly. And of course there is Critic Myth and Blitzoff and Pete Face should talk about it now.
I started drawing, I'm sorry. I'm listening. I just wasn't actively thinking. Okay. What?
I was just going to say,
I said that.
I'll go and
Yeah. Oh, no, you go, please.
I was going to say another one that's often done over and over is, of course, Faust. The Faustian Pact.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Over and over. But I don't even know if that started with Faust, because we have, echoes with the jinns, the Middle Eastern, the genies and all that, and it's exactly the same kind of stuff. They'll offer
definitely.
you 3 wishes, and they always turn out really bad.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing about a lot of the myths, though, is that a lot of those probably even take off of somewhere else. I mean, if religious books are anything to go by, and how much they play off of one another, and the stories that they get, how you'll find the same kind of stories or themes in so many other books and tales that came out before then or around the time. I think it's more often that a myth will share details with another myth than, okay, I'm not saying it right. No. I'm saying it much more complicated than I need to.
They descended from other myths?
I stopped thinking.
That's the thing.
You
can trace.
That happens all the time.
Their origins. Christianity is based on Judaism and Zoroastrianism.
Zoroastrianism.
Even some Greek get elements from Near Eastern stories. A lot of people, scholars, say that Homer, and I tend to side with this, was inspired by epics like Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think so too. I mean, I would also agree for that. I mean, the epics, at the time, epics were like the blockbusters of the era. So it's impossible not to have heard and not to have been exposed, at least to parts of this. So, yeah definitely.
Yeah, everybody wanted to do their version.
And people are in the business of entertainment, and someone like Homer would have been. You want to know what is going around. So, I do think that. Yeah, of course.
And later mythology is obviously mirrors with all the Norse gods, direct analogues of all of them with the Greek gods and the Roman gods. You've got direct analogues, and people might say, "Oh no, but it's a different." No, it's not really that different, because the Romans were a huge cultural influence, almost 1,000 years before the Vikings existed. Well, yeah, that's obvious that there would have been some kind of cultural antecedents to their religion and cultural practice. Yeah. These things carry on, and we take the best things and we adapt them and incorporate them to our own mythology. And
I also think that, yes, and for example, urban legends came back to the older ones that yielded the stuff like, killer fairies or trolls and leprechauns and stuff like that. And then you have that are lurking in corners or in wells or at the edge of lakes and things like that. And then you have in modern cities, they lurk in alleyways and anywhere where, the shadows are very thick and cats don't go because they are not silly. So
that's true. They become and fairies mutate into ghosts and aliens now. That's what they are in modern mythology. They have transformed. And I was just going to think of something when you were saying older myths. There's the famous song.
Oh, you cut out there, Oz.
Oh,
yeah, you cut out.
Am I still here?
Yeah, now you are.
Okay, there's this famous song, Mac the Knife, if you've ever heard of it.
Oh, yeah.
Which is so popular back in the 1950s, I think it was.
Oh, the shark bites.
Yeah, Mac the Knife. And it's like the way he sings about it, and because of the era it comes from, it's basically about like a gangster, like a criminal who cuts people and steals their money. And that was a modern adaptation of that. But the original Mac the Knife comes from Elizabethan times, from Shakespeare, which is it's a fantastic an adaptation that people don't even realize that it has that sort of origin. And it's been perfectly modernized in such a beautifully clever way, so you don't even realize it has that history to it. But yeah, that's not so much a myth, but it's an adaptation from antiquity.
Yeah.
But it's the same.
Yeah.
Which really comes down to that. I mean, if you are going to adapt something and you want to adapt it and basically make it be reborn into a different setting or a different era, make it be its own self, rather than like an of the past, of whatever the past was.
Rather than just dragging it into the future. And although there have been some good things where I think Neil Gaiman, he had his American Gods or whatever that was, and he has done various things like that where he has done his stories, and he has brought things into the future and changed them in different ways. He did this London Underground, or London Below, I think it was called, which was a story that takes modern London and with all the names of the train stations, like Archangel and things like that, and he creates mythologies around them for, why is it actually called? Actually, because Archangel Gabriel actually lives under there in this alternate version of London that you don't even realize is there. And all the bums, all the homeless people are actually part of this London that no one really sees. And they're...
Yeah, that sounds fascinating, actually.
Yeah, it's really what he has the King Arthur myth. He takes it into the future and adapts it into this modern fantasy. It's really clever. So I recommend that. London Below, I believe it was called.
It's a book, right?
It is, and also a TV series, if you can find it anywhere. London Below.
Oh, okay.
And there's a radio adaptation as well. There's a lot of it about. So probably
soon I too will be living in a London station.
You should keep your eyes out.
Yeah. Careful around those train stations. That's where the baddies live. The hidden people. Don't get sucked into their world. Don't.
And that's that updated version of that. Sorry, go ahead.
Or at worst, you will end up in Hogwarts or something.
It's the myth of the secret world, or the secret land, or the hidden, the masquerade.
Also, and which also hangs really back. I mean, going at least until all the way back to Arthur with Avalon and the Crystal Cave and all these things that were sort of portals into this fairyland that was in parallel to human world. especially in Irish myth, there are a lot of these sort of hidden portals that take you to other worlds, or where all these creatures that are slightly magical or very magical and supernatural, especially with fairies. Fairies have a lot of these things.
Oh, yes. The good old fairies. They take you to their magical bars with the beautiful rainbows on the outside and introduce you to a whole new world. Oh, go on, Tom. Sorry.
No, I was saying that Irish and Scottish fairies can be pretty terrible. But they have a magical world.
They're absolute bastards. I think most modern adaptations with fairies always have them as being the Disney. They're classic. They're the ones who have changed fairies in the modern mind into something good. Although Tinkerbell could be a little bitch sometimes. She could be a bit but mostly they've changed fairies into being something beautiful and pretty and lovely. But in the original stories, they're rather nasty little shits.
Like, for sure. A lot of the fairy tales, if you read the Grimm's Brothers collections and stuff like that, you definitely see these are horror stories. Usually,
Yes.
There's tales of warning, and like for kids to like watch out for.
Original Snow White was a horror story, actually, in my opinion, at least. If you have read it, there's a lot. It could be a splatter movie, actually, and it would be very close to the original.
Wow. Does she end up? What happens in the end?
If I remember right, that the evil queen at some point chops off her hands at the wrist, and she sort of she goes psycho on her a lot, and she has to spend I don't know how many years without hands, and the dwarves help her and stuff, and there are some magic elements going on. And because she's so good, eventually the hands will grow, but she still lives some years without hands. And
wow.
Yeah, of course, she doesn't die from getting her hands chopped off, which is weird. But
that's the part you find weird.
Just that, Pete.
Well, the psycho is going to be a psycho. I mean, of course, but yeah, and most of the Grimm fairy tales are like that, the original versions, not the sanitized ones. You have lots of cannibalism. You have disembowelments. You have you got
all sorts of things. I got to read them. Actually, I got to take a class on it before I graduated, and read a great deal of fairy tales. It was one of the coolest classes I'd ever taken, man. Oh, I loved it. It was fantastic.
I often wonder, is Grimm named after them? Is that the coining of the word, or is it older? Is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like the adjective Grimm?
You mean the series, don't you? The movie?
No, the word Grimm and its implications.
I don't know. I could be.
Or is it just a coincidence?
It's a good question, yeah. I wonder.
Or was it that one of those things where they have the name and they think, oh, we've got to live up to this?
These stories need more blood. Yeah, like the originals were sent and the Grimm brothers. But these things aren't going to sell unless there's some blood and guts in
it. The fairy tales were originally like warning tales for children. So
yes, exactly.
The bloodier the better. You're going to be drawn and quartered if you go unsupervised in the woods.
I remember one in my children's lit class called The New Mother. And it was a tale about, if kids misbehave too much, like their mother told them, like, if you keep misbehaving, I'm going to have to leave and you'll have a new mother. And she'll have these like blue like torch-like eyes and a wooden tail, and you'll have to live with her, And the kids won't listen, and they keep misbehaving. And one day, like they come out of the room, and their mother is like sitting there sadly. Their mother just gets up and like walks out of the house. And then this being comes like towards the house with these like shining. It was a terrifying story, actually, even as an adult. And the kids run out of the house and they have to live in the woods, and they watch this like monster mother in the house. It's like, holy shit!
Wow.
It's like gave me the creeps. I was like, yeah.
It sounds like
anyway, that popped into mind. I had to say.
Jeez, that sounds like one of those. What is it? Like a Burton movie or a no?
Yes, exactly. I'm surprised.
Guillermo del Toro film.
Exactly.
That's exactly what I was thinking about right now. I love his myth-based films a lot.
Awesome.
And as a kid, I remember that for some reason, I don't know who was psyched into giving me a book of the original Grimm fairy tales. I must have been something like 6 or 7 years old when I first read the original ones. And I think it was either my grandmother or someone like that. And she thought like they were going to be like the fairy tales and everything. And they were like this blood and gore and everything. It was the first thing that I had read that was this gory and this bloody, and I was fascinated by it. I remember that it was an experience as a kid.
Yeah.
It did make me very cautious, by the way. Like I kept being very cautious of everyone afterwards. But
well, it worked.
So it worked. Yes, it did. So maybe she did it on purpose because I was a very inquisitive kid, and I go into things and explore and stuff. And then she gave me the book. But I also think that it was like because I liked it so much, then I started reading all the fairy tales I could get in my hands ever. Like the grimmer, the better. Awesome. So
yeah, the grimmer, the better. So those are all those ones had Germanic origins, obviously, because the Grimms went about collecting old histories of all throughout the German states, and that was their thing. But they're also very similar kind of stories in France and.
Well, yeah, Cinderella is found. It's uncanny. Like versions of Cinderella before, the Grimms published anything, have been found all over the world, including Asia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, Cinderella, jeez. And all we remember is the Disney one now, the Disney version.
Yeah.
Which is very different. There are a lot of British and Irish and Scottish fairy tales as well, which have a very different character again, which they have a sort of almost a moral dimension, but it's an amoral dimension more than anything else. It's usually the moral of the story is don't piss off the fairies.
Right.
Don't, because they don't give a crap about anyone and anything, and they just do whatever the F they feel like.
Whatever the fairy they want.
Yeah, they don't like children at all. Well, they love children. They love messing.
They love to have
it. They love like stuffing them into rock pools or whatever, so they drown, or or tree stumps or something like that. They're just little awful creatures. But we don't have enough of those things. People have not adapted the fairy tales enough. They've done a bit with the Grimms, but we need more fairy tales coming forward. Maybe some serial killers and stuff like that are adaptations of fairy tales.
Sure.
I wonder if that is a dimension that is there, because you hear, we have these famous stories about serial killers, Silence of the Lambs or whatever, and if you go and read the original like Irish and Scottish stories of the fairies, there's an uncanny sort of similarity between the way they act and the way serial killer characters act. You know, they're responsible for the disappearance of these people and, you know, children, and no one knows why, and you know, they have their own particular rules and ways of doing things and stuff like that, you know, it only means something to them and no one else. And I wonder if that's a parallel.
Oh, it's a good insight, man. Yeah. I mean, I think like a lot of these like whole stories that last for centuries in some form or another speak to something essential. And I said it before today, but like in humans, you know,
Stephen
and
King's
that's why
It.
they last. Sure. Very
That's
much so.
obviously very much an adaptation of old Irish and Scottish fairy tales, because that's what they used to, exactly all the same thing. It would only affect children, and you know, all that. You know, water is a
Also
Mm-hmm.
big feature in that. I'll go on, Tons.
Right.
Also the personification of death, either the capturing of death, so that nobody can die. That originated in antiquity. I mean, I have seen it not only in Greek myth, I have seen it in other myths as well, like capturing death, and so nobody can die, and then they off, and then they release death so that he can continue to do doing what he does. Or death becoming in love, falling in love with a young woman.
Yeah.
This again is very.
So you have Dracula, and like, even you can get off of that. It's always the monster falls in love with. Whatever.
Good point, Bain.
With a fair maiden. The fair and pure maiden, of course, because nobody looks at the tramp, although she might be very beautiful, I guess. So
the monster falling in love with a fair maiden. I wonder if that's going on with the current American presidency. They're doing a version of that sort of thing.
You know,
it
that
speaks to something in humans, like as we grow up and like we fall in love, and like it's sort of these tales to sort of get people through life, kind of, you know, and like
exactly.
the pitfalls of, you know, love and marriage and sex and like all this kind of stuff, like these sort of essentials of humanity. That's where these stories come from, right? And that's why they last.
Then you have the Sphinx sort of myth. This supernatural.
What the hell is that?
What is that?
I lost you.
We didn't lose you, apparently.
He's got his milkshake maker going.
I was saying like the Sphinx myth, like this supernatural creature that comes and tests your character, in a sense, either by solve riddles or do stuff, and if you pass the test, you can, you know, go along your merry way and be happy. Or if you don't, it kills you.
Right.
I mean, you know, the encounter with this supernatural entity that will force you to show what kind of person you are. Again, I think it's a very recurring pattern.
Yeah, that's true. That's something that's used again and again and again in different ways. The judging and the riddles and stuff. Of course, Tolkien famously used it with Gollum and Bilbo. Very obviously. I think they did this. Yeah. They had the same riddle, didn't they? I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Don't remember.
Everyone knows the riddle of the Sphinx.
Yeah.
Man walks on two legs.
You want me to tell the thing? It's like what creature is the one that crawls in the morning, walks on two legs until at noon, and with three...
No, it's like what walks on four legs in the morning, two legs in the afternoon, and three legs in the evening.
Exactly. That's the riddle.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. That poor dog.
Yeah.
At least he got a prosthetic in the end, but you know, only one. They couldn't bring for two bastards. All right. Well, thank you, guys. This has been a fascinating Quackcast about adapting this, and we took it in another direction. We were talking about like the not only just adapting myths, but the whole lineage of stories throughout human culture, which is a very fascinating kind of dimension to the whole thing. It's really interesting to see how they constantly get recycled and used and adapted again and again and again. And yeah, fantastic topic, Tance.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very much.
It's very clever. And you can read that, people. You can read the proper versions of it from last week and this week, and they'll all be linked in this Quackcast. I hope you do read them, you bastards, because it's fascinating stuff.
Don't make them do homework for the class.
Yeah.
I will lock your account until after the quiz.
Yeah.
There'll be exams.
It will be on the test.
50% of your mark depends on this. All right. It's important. So, yeah, this has been the Quackcast. Thank you very much for being on Quackcast 311, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Music.
Bye.